Hello and welcome to the Black Entrepreneur Blueprint Show. I am your host, Jay Jones. Black Entrepreneur Blueprint was created specifically to educate and inspire black entrepreneurs to launch, build, and grow successful businesses. Join us as we help build an economic power base in the black community by promoting business ownership. If you are currently an entrepreneur or want to be an entrepreneur, we invite you to join us every week here at Black Entrepreneur Blueprint.
Welcome to the Black Entrepreneur Blueprint, episode number 185. I'm your host, Jay Jones, and today we have a dynamic and informative show as usual, guys. Today, in memory of one of the great black entrepreneurial titans, Mr. John W. Barfield, who is a billionaire who passed away on January 2nd at the age of 90 years old. We're going to be playing an interview that Mr. Barfield did, and I'm also going to do some commentary at the end of the interview. It's about a 12 to 13 minute interview, and if you don't know who John Barfield is, he was a janitor that became a billionaire with his company called Bartech, and it's a tremendous story. John Barfield once again passed away at the age of 90 on January 2nd, 2018, and we want to honor this black titan. So hold tight, and we're going to be listening to an interview done by American Black Journal. Mr. Stephen Henderson interviewed John Barfield, and after that interview, I just want to give you a couple of takeaways and some insight into the man and his entrepreneurial journey. Hold tight for John Barfield.
I started out to do something that would benefit my family. And as a result of many good fortunes and many wonderful people that I've met along the way, I have been able to provide my family with educations and experiences that I never had.
In a country and an era riven by racial oppression and struggle, it's impossible to find a single person who can embody those times. But there is one man who comes close. John W. Barfield, born to poor Southern sharecroppers, who went on to build a billion-dollar international business, a family business.
My father was an extraordinary man. He was big and a powerful physique and was maybe the kindest person I've ever known. He was too kind to even spank my sister and I. That was a job that my mother had to do. They taught us a lot of principles, and I've been asked why they taught you these principles, that these were principles that were designed to protect us from God and man. Living in the South where we did, you could be lynched for nothing. We thought that Pennsylvania would be better, but we found that Pennsylvania, for my folks, was almost as bad. My father had to work almost as hard there as he did in the South.
Like many great success stories, yours has very humble beginnings. Born in Tuscaloosa, Alabama in 1927. But we were talking before the show started, and you were telling me about being a janitor at the University of Michigan in 1949 and deciding from there to leave to start your own business. I want to start the interview there. Talk to me about what it was that it led you to make that decision and made you think this will turn out to be better than what I'm doing.
Well, I left high school after the 10th grade. I was 16 years old, and when I became 17 years old, I joined the U.S. Army, and I served for 2 years in Germany and France and came back to this country without any skills. So I applied for a job at the University of Michigan as a wall washer, and at the end of the wall washing period, I was one of the people there that was offered a job as a custodian, and I worked from 1949 to 1954 as a janitor in the chemistry building. I left that job in 1954, but the way I left it was I had to find more income because my family was growing.
Sure.
And I noticed that they were building a number of homes on the west side of Ann Arbor. So I went to the builders and I said, my name is John Barfield. I'd like to clean your houses for you. I can do them better, cheaper, and on time. Would you give me an opportunity? And they did. And I made an amazing discovery. That discovery was that I could clean 2 small homes in a day, and I was paid $35 for each. So I was able to make as much in one day working for myself as I could in a whole week working for the university.
Working for the university, right?
So that's when I decided to leave the university and to become an entrepreneur.
Yeah, but this is also a time when African Americans weren't assumed to be able to manage companies, to build companies. Tell me about some of the resistance that you encountered early on and sort of how you navigated around it.
Well, you're true. It was a time when African American women were thought not to be able to handle complex, profitable, large opportunities. Yeah. And it took a while before people gave me an opportunity. But I stayed with the university, and then when I left in 1954, I wrote a book called The Barfield Method of Building Maintenance, and I started cleaning commercial and industrial buildings. And 13 years after I left the University of Michigan, I was met by a number of large corporations. There were Consolidated Foods, Mackey Corporation, the Senators Corporation, International Telephone, all wanting to buy my business. So I sold the business in 1969 to IT&T for one of the largest multiples that they'd ever paid at that time for a contract cleaning service.
And how do you get from there to the Barfield Group, the Bartech Group, I should say?
In 1975, I got a call from the General Motors Corporation asking me would I be interested in coming out. They had a proposal for me. So I went out to the hydromatic plant there, and they said, would you help us find minorities and women that we could buy goods and services from? That was right after the boycott.
Yeah.
And I think our leaders went to the large corporations that we buy your goods and services, but you don't give us time. You don't give us any options.
Sure.
Unless you change that, we're going to boycott. And that's what started this minority business development program. So after a year of looking, we found only one African American, and his business was selling corrugated boxes back to the corporations. And that's when they said, John, we have a proposal for you. We'd like for you to clean up some old engineering drawings for us. And if you can do this to our satisfaction in 6 months, we'll continue to give you opportunities. And that was the beginning of the Bartech Group. We started that company with 6 students from Washtenaw Community College. In a day, that company has grown to over 3,000 employees.
Wow. So, I mean, as I said in the open, I mean, you can't talk about business or black business in Detroit without talking about you and the things that you have done. It's been a long time for you, though. I mean, that you've been at this, and you've seen a lot of change over that time in the city, in business. What do you see today as the things that are either opportunities for African Americans who want to start their own businesses, or things that are still obstacles?
Well, I don't see a lot of intelligent effort going on to start black businesses. Interestingly enough, I was asked by the Detroit public school system to come up with an idea of how we could create more black businesses, particularly with the students attending high schools. And I met with them the other day and gave them an idea of embedding an entrepreneurial training program at every high school in the city of Detroit.
Yeah.
We really have to do a better job of providing opportunities for our young people.
And we don't, I mean, schools in general are not teaching kids to be entrepreneurs. I mean, they are really geared toward, sending kids into careers, I think. And there's not that much focus on the idea that, well, maybe you could start your own thing and sort of control your own destiny.
Yeah. One of the things that I think has held us back as a people is we have not realized the true value of our time and our talents. And that's what started me off on my road to success. We think that we don't realize sometimes the difference between ordinary income and meaningful wealth. What we have to begin to teach our people is that it's not about ordinary income. The whole purpose of working is to create wealth.
For yourself.
Yeah, for yourself.
And your family.
And,
right.
and until we learn to do that, we will not have the success we're looking for.
And what are some of the things that you have to think of when you're doing that? I mean, what are the practical things that you need to teach kids when they're teenagers or in high school that lead them to thinking that way?
Well, let me give you an example. I worked for the university for 6 years. And at the end of the 6th year, I was making $70 a week. Then I started my own business, and then I left the university. But if I'd worked for the University of Michigan for 14 more years, it would have been a total of 20 years. And if I had gotten a 5% increase for each one of those 14 years, at the end of a 20-year career, I would have been making $8,000 a year,
right,
which would not have been enough to provide the education for my children. So I would have been trapped. I would not have made any progress myself, and my children would not have made any progress.
Sure.
As a result of leaving, I was able to send my children to good schools. I was able to buy a nice home for my family, and I was able to enjoy some of the amenities that we all hope and pray to have. If I had continued to work for the university, none of that would have happened.
Yeah.
So we have to learn that we have only so many hours in a lifetime to work, and if you spend all of that time working as an employee of others, you will create ordinary wealth, but you won't create meaningful wealth.
Yeah.
And that's what we should be working toward.
I mean, at the same time, if you're someone who has that job that has a steady paycheck and seems to promise opportunity for growth, it can be scary to say, well, I'll give this up in favor of something that is riskier, and maybe it'll work, but maybe it'll pay me less. How do you get people to overcome that?
Well, you had to be very careful. A lot of people are encouraging people to quit their jobs and to become entrepreneurs, full-time entrepreneurs. We think that's very dangerous because most new business ventures fail.
Right?
They fail. So we encourage people not to do that, but to become part-time entrepreneurs.
Find something that you can do while you're still working.
Yes. For example, if you were a skilled worker and you made $25 an hour, and you worked for a corporation that paid you that, you should realize that I'm worth more than that. Really, what I'm worth is what my boss charges for my time.
Right.
So we try to encourage people to start their own businesses on a part-time basis, to become, if you will, a company of one.
Yeah.
To work full-time, but to spend some of your time working part-time. And when you do that, you have to realize how to charge for your services. For example, if I'm a skilled worker and I make $30 an hour, I have to realize that my employer marks my time up 150% or more, and he gets
$70 or $80
the difference between what he pays us and what he charges his other customers, and that's how he builds wealth. At the same time, the people that are providing that opportunity for him build no wealth at all.
Yeah.
So we try to get people to work for themselves on a part-time basis.
Sure. We've got about a minute left. Tell me about one thing that you say or would say to young people. I mean, looking back on your life and your career, if you had one piece of advice for young people to sort of follow in that path or to forge a different path that would be equally successful, what would that one thing be?
I would say to you that the only way that you can find the path to wealth is to realize the value of your time and your talents. That's when you can begin to move forward.
Yeah.
Not to rely on other people to tell you what you're worth, but to realize your value yourself. And to
have the confidence to do that. I
to
mean,
move forward.
That's one of the real hurdles, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
it's not hard to be successful when you realize how valuable you are.
Yeah. All right. Wonderful advice, and congratulations on all your success and on the documentary.
Well, thank you very much. I'm very proud of the book, and I think it was written with humility and deference, and I think there's some good principles and some good lessons, and I hope more people will read it.
That was an amazing interview with John W. Barfield, and there's so many takeaways that I want to talk about in this episode, and it's crazy because if you really think about it, he started out as a janitor, dropped out of high school, went into the service, started out as a janitor, and built $1 billion organization. Actually, the title of his book is called Starting from Scratch, The Humble Beginnings of a $2 billion Enterprise. So it's a $2 billion company. And he started out as a janitor. And he had so many takeaways that is crazy. But I do want to touch on just a few. One of the first things that he said that really piqued my interest was, he said, we don't realize the true value of our time and our talents. And I've talked about this on several of the other shows or a couple episodes, that if somebody is paying you, meaning if you're working and you have a job, that means somebody values your skill set. I don't care if you're sweeping floors. I don't care if you're doing accounting, anything, whatever. So you have a talent, and if you have a job and somebody's paying you for it, that means you have a viable skill. Now, you can take that skill and continue to work for somebody else, or you can do what John Barfield did, and he took all his skills and know-how, and he started his own company, which kind of transcended into the Bartech Group. So he started out doing one thing, and then one thing led to another, and he continued to build and grow up until he had a $2 billion enterprise. So that really stuck out to me. And something else that's really important, he talked about ordinary income versus meaningful wealth. And he really hit home when he said, it's not about ordinary income. He said the whole purpose of working is to create meaningful wealth. Why are you working? Do you want ordinary income, or do you want meaningful wealth? And so that's very powerful, because you have to think about it. He talks about having so many hours in a day, and you can work for only so many hours in your lifetime, a finite amount of hours. So what are you going to do with those hours? Are you going to work for ordinary income, or are you going to try to create meaningful wealth for you and your family? Now, it's funny because he talked about being a janitor for 6 years, and at the end of the 6 years, he was making $70 per week. So he said if he continued to work for the University of Michigan for 14 more years, which give him a total of 20 years, that he would have, and if he would have gotten a 5% increase after each year, he would have been making $8,000 per year. And he said he would have been trapped. He said he would have been trapped. So what he did was he extrapolated. If I stay here, I was here 6 years. If I worked another 14 years, at the end of that 20-year period, with a 5% increase each year, I'm only going to be making $8,000 a year. And he said, based on his family size and his needs, he would have been trapped. So what did he do? He decided to go out on his own. He took that risk. Now, it's funny, he mentions in his interview to go out part-time. And sometimes that's an option. But a lot of times, if you give part-time effort, you're going to get part-time results. So you just have to determine what's right for you, starting part-time or going full-time. And I always tell you guys, never just go in and say, hey, I quit. Make sure you have a plan that you build up to that. And I know sometimes it doesn't happen like that because you may get fired, laid off, or something of that nature. Something else that he also really piqued my interest in, he said, don't rely on other people to tell you what you're worth. Do not rely on other people to tell you what you're worth. He said, realize your own value and move forward. He said, it's not hard to be successful when you realize how valuable you are. And once again, that goes back to the point of, if you're currently employed, that means that you have some value to an organization. Now, as Mr. Barfield mentioned in the interview, your value to that organization may be $50 an hour, but they may only be paying you $25 an hour. Okay, so it's arbitrage. All right, you have a value, and they're going to take the difference because they're not going to pay you what you're worth. The only way you're going to get paid what you're worth is if you go out and do it yourself. And that's what John Barfield was talking about. So that was very important too. And also not just about business, but he talked at the end of the interview about vaccinating African children. And at the time this video was shot, he had vaccinated over 400,000 African children for polio. So he wasn't just a great entrepreneur. He was a great man. And it was more of a purpose. Yeah, you want to make money, you want to live a certain lifestyle, but you also need to serve others. And that's what really makes John Barfield such a great role model and example for any entrepreneur. You know, we're just blessed to have him, you know, for 90 years. And once again, he passed away January 2nd. But he's an entrepreneur that really didn't get a lot of the notoriety. You know, there are other people out there that are big in social media and they got their name all over the place. He was a quiet man, and he continued to do his thing. And he brought his family into business. I think all of his children worked in the business with him. I think he had 6 children. And it's just a tremendous story. And it shows you what you can do if you focus, put your mind to it, and make a commitment. Once again, he started out as a janitor, and he grew a $2 billion company. I mean, that story is amazing into and of itself. And it's funny. I just want to read a little bit. There was a piece about him. I believe this was in not Black Enterprise, Cranes magazine, or article that was just out. But I just want to read a little bit about John W. Barfield and what his thought process was, even when he was little. And so it goes, day after day, I would see my dad come home from the mines. His father worked in the coal mines, recalled Barfield. He would get home. My mother would have 3 or 4 pots on the stove for his bath. The coal dust had an oil in it, so ordinary soap wouldn't remove it. I knew by the grace of God that I was going to do something different, Barfield says. I was 9 and delivering newspapers. Delivering papers took me into the better areas of town. One of his customers who sold powdered soap took the then young Johnny Barfield under his wing. He would sell the soap from house to house for 15 cents a box. He wore a shirt and a tie to work. He went to work clean and came home clean. Barfield asked him if he could help. Well, Johnny, the man said, do you think you can do this? Yes, Barfield said eagerly. The man gave Barfield a job sweeping the floor and loading the boxes. I couldn't get enough of learning, Barfield recalled. Within 7 or 8 months, Barfield could run the man's business as well as he did. He saw something in me, and I was an entrepreneur at 8 years old. The crowning moment was when Barfield asked the man if he could try selling the soap. Once again, the man asked, do you think you can do this? Barfield once again said yes. So Barfield got busy walking through the neighborhood, knocking on doors with a heavy load of boxes on his back, selling boxes of soap. Who's going to say no to a 9-year-old boy? They didn't buy 1 box, but 5 or 6. Then the man gave Barfield a commission, 5 cents for every 15-cent box he sold. Barfield remembers, he had shown me the path I had been looking for. I was learning to be a businessman. I have been on that path ever since. So at a young age, John Barfield realized that if you work hard and you work smart, you can make more money. And especially seeing his father, the hard, laborious work that his father was doing and the toll that it took on him physically. And so he realized at a young age he did not want to do that. So he always had it in his mind from that early age that I'm going to find a way to make it work better, working smarter. He always worked hard, but he's working smarter, not killing himself in a coal mine. Now, back in those days, remember John Barfield died at 90. So, he was born a long time ago. So our opportunities were limited at that time. And that's why with today's economy and to the technology we have today, there's absolutely no excuse, none, for us not to have some type of business, some type of side business. E-commerce, man, it's ridiculous. And as we continue to move forward, your children, your children's children, e-commerce is going to be just as common as getting up and going to the corner store. So that's something that we need to jump on, and it's worldwide. So I'm working on my new book, A New Black Wall Street. I'm still working on the subtitle, but it's going to be dealing with e-commerce. And one of the things is it's not just a 16 or 18 block black neighborhood in Tulsa, Oklahoma. It's going to be worldwide, and that's what it is. The economy today is worldwide, and you can choose to be a part of it or not. So you can either be a consumer or a producer. And that's what our problem is as black folk. All we want to do is consume and not produce. All right. So John W. Barfield, guys, please get the book Starting from Scratch, The Humble Beginnings of a $2 billion Enterprise. I just picked it up. Didn't start it yet. Just came 2 days ago. But if it's anything like the interview and the man himself, I'm sure it's a tremendous book, and I'm sure it's a great motivation. Just his history, his life story in itself, starting from a janitor to creating a $2 billion enterprise. And I'm sure we all could learn a tremendous amount from that. So once again, I just want to honor John W. Barfield, great black titan, entrepreneur, man, father, community figure. And it's not just about the money, guys. You see that he did other things with his resources for the community and for the world. So please, we definitely want to honor John Barfield. When you get a chance, Starting from Scratch, go check it out. It's on Amazon. You can buy it at any major bookstore. Okay. Before we close out, guys, once again, I just want to let you know that every week, when the show drops every Monday morning at 5 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, we get more and more downloads. And once again, that's attributed to the Black Entrepreneur Blueprint family. I can't do it without you guys. I appreciate you and I love you. And please continue to spread the word via social media, word of mouth, whatever you need to do to get the show out there. I definitely want to touch and reach as many people as possible. It's funny because I get so many emails and different communications that, people are like, man, we're digging what you're doing. So please continue to spread the word. I love what I'm doing. That's my assignment. I'm a teacher by nature. And I like to share my experiences because, once again, my experiences aren't just for me. They're for others. So all the good stuff that's happening, all the setbacks that I've had, and you guys have heard them on the show, some of the crazy things that have happened to me in my life and in my business. So I just want to continue to keep sharing that information, hopefully helping people. If I'm a couple of steps ahead of somebody else, hopefully I can help guide them to where they want to be. So if you need to connect with me, anything like real long or whatever, just email me at jjones@blackentrepreneurblueprint.com. That's JAYJONES at blackentrepreneurblueprint.com. Facebook, Black Entrepreneur Blueprint. Twitter, jjones001. Instagram, jjones4real, the number 4, REAL. And YouTube, check out my YouTube channel, Black Entrepreneur Blueprint. I love you guys. I'll see you same time next week. Peace.